I don't work for GB News, so I'm not a shock job. I have an actual job, so like if I say psychosis of whiteness, it's not for clicks. It's because this is the only metaphor I could come up with to say, well, whiteness is not white people, it's a set of ideas that govern how we understand the world, and it is completely delusional, distorted, and psychosis also is supported by hallucinations. And so in the book, actually comes from a paper I wrote in 2016, it says that movies and the media are the hallucinations that support the psychosis. So it's essentially a metaphor to say the way we understand the world, all of us, black and brown people as well, is deeply distorted. And it ties into, this book was actually really important, I used it in Psychosis, Colour of Madness, I actually also wanted to trouble this term psychosis because we are, as black people, much more likely to be diagnosed with psychosis, much more likely to be sectioned under the Mental Health Act. And actually the term psychosis itself isn't even a real, it's used interchangeably with schizophrenia, it isn't this objective medical definition. The history of it is deeply racist and racialized. So I actually wanted to trouble the term psychosis as well at the same time as doing this.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really interesting because we have three authors here, all coming from very different backgrounds, all writing different books, but there are obviously intersections within those books. But I would go on to say, and I think this is a lovely line or description I think that I remember from your book, Samara, that talks about lived experience, lived expert by experience. And in that way, I think all of us in some ways, we have that lived experience, so we're experts because of our lived experiences. And I think when we talk about mental health along a spectrum, with maybe wellness at one end and mental ill health at another end, and how inextricably linked they are to, if we want to talk about systems, and we could substitute that word for whiteness if we wanted to, it strikes me that there's this extra layer. So mental health and mental wellness, mental well-being in general, they're universal experiences, so they're kind of outside race if in one aspect. But in another aspect, we also have to deal with that extra layer of what our blackness and colour brings to, and race brings to the conversation. So I wondered then around how storytelling might be used as a vehicle to navigate those different experiences, and what you found in your book, which is a collection of stories, short fiction, and non-fiction, poetry. You also have some art in there as well. And I wondered about your experience of curating some of these stories and how you found and feel storytelling weighs into this picture.
Ooh, it's a big question, but I'll try and tackle it. A funny anecdote, and it's funny probably the same way Kehinde talked about, sometimes you have to just laugh at the psychosis of whiteness that you see. When we first did the call for submissions for this book, and we specifically said we want to hear from people of colour in the UK who have either experience of mental health issues, however defined, or have some sort of connection to the mental health world, you would not believe the number of submissions we got from white men. An obscene amount of submissions. I spent so much time Googling people's names, looking at their social media profiles, because sometimes you'd read the submissions and you just think, I don't think one of my people wrote this. I just don't think. And kind of just the audacity and the entitlement that a lot of these writers and felt to a book that is about an experience that's so, I guess, personal, so collective, but also so marginalised, so overlooked in the mainstream. And so, putting this book together, one of the things that we were very clear about in the beginning was this idea of labels, this idea of naming and words. And personally, I don't really like to use the term, mental illness and that kind of thing, and I talk much more about distress. Because for me, distress kind of encompasses more the impacts of our world and how we move through this world and how this world perceives us, on ourselves, on our bodies, on our minds. And I don't know if how many of you have read Mad World by Misha Fraser. Fraser Cow. But she talks about how the world inscribes itself on our body minds, and in turn, our body minds then create effects that put themselves back onto our world. And think is really captured in the various stories in this book, where we didn't really have any theme beyond mental health, yet people talked about wide-ranging experiences from wide-ranging backgrounds that had this common thread of oppression, marginalisation, alienation, because of who they are existing in white British society. So whether that is, existing as a black woman in white British society, existing as a queer, disabled person of colour in white British society, these labels, these the cloaks we wear almost, they impact our lives and our body minds in very specific ways, and often detrimental ways when society is set up to function in a different way. So I think that's one of the things that really stood out to me in this book, was just this common thread that ran through what otherwise is a very diverse range of experiences. And I think putting this book together, for me, was quite cathartic. I think in terms of realising that, not just realising, but I guess reaffirming that this was not a problem with me as an individual, but it was a problem with this maddening world in which we exist in. And therefore, the solutions, the way that we survive our distress, has to be about changing, interrogating, dismantling the structures in this maddening world and making it a more livable space. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, really, really good. Thank you. I want to kind of pose a similar question to you, Chloe, around how you feel telling your story as part of your book as well, around wellness. How important has that been in just addressing your own kind of feeling and approach towards your own mental health and well-being, and I guess by extension, others?
Yeah, sure. I think advocation comes up a lot for me, dealing with my own mental health or my own well-being, helps me advise or at least support other people. And that's community-wide, that's on a professional level, it really does vary. But what I have learned is that, I feel like I'm just going to mimic everything he says, but that a lot of this does exist outside of ourselves, but when it comes to wellness, I think it's an action that we can take. It's almost like resistance, basically. It's saying, okay, this is what is happening, these are the stats, but here is what I can do, and it's an action that I'm going to take. And it doesn't have to be this massive thing, it doesn't have to be this overwhelming change. It doesn't mean that our whole life, our homes, our families, our communities, all of these things, they don't need to change drastically. They can just be small changes that are consistently made over time that actually contributes to a bigger change, a wider change. And that's what I've seen, from making sure that I go out every day. It sounds really, small, but making sure that I get out, making sure that I'm nourishing myself, making sure that I'm connecting myself to nature, not structures, not institutions, but connecting myself to the nature that's around me. Yes, some of us live in what seems like concrete jungles or like concrete structures or concrete homes, but there are green spaces. We can have access to them. We can actually even own some of these spaces, and just having that kind of mentality and that vision and that hope, it does make a change. And I think that is wellness to me. It's making small changes every day for yourself as an individual, and then doing it and bringing more people into the mix. Like, the best way to do that, honestly, is to live by example, and that's why I've grown a community. It just came out of an idea. I didn't think anyone was going to follow me. I didn't think anything was going to happen. Fast forward 5 years, I would never imagine that I'm here with a book that says my name on it. Like, I would never imagine it, but I just felt that something had to happen and something needed to change, and I was prepared to do that for myself and open my arms up for other people to join. And it has changed. It's a global thing that we've done, We've done events across the UK, the US, I want to say the diaspora, and we're collectively bringing people in to that vision. And you don't need to pay to be a part of it, you just have to believe in it.
Incredible. I think just kind of weighing in and picking up that thread about what you can do and what you are doing as an individual and as with your community as part of a group of individuals, and kind of tying that back into that coming out of you telling your story and sharing your story, and Samara curating a group of stories. Kehinde, I know with your book, Psychosis of Wellness, you kind of start off with a bit of a story of your childhood and some of the things that you went through as a child, which clearly have informed, you know, the work that you do today. So I think I would like to also ask you the same question around how storytelling for you and you telling your story has fed into your experience of mental health as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so one of the things someone asked me this question the other day. One of the as a way of writing, actually storytelling is a really interesting way. Again, different to academic writing, which doesn't usually do this. So actually, telling stories is quite a way to bring people in, right? Actually, this book in particular has a lot of, I say autobiographical, but stories, things that happened, right? Things which, and sometimes that's the best way to think through systems. So, for instance, I keep trying to get fired from work, but they won't fire me. So, if I keep telling this story, they'll fire me eventually, I think. So, one of the stories in the book, which ties into mental health, actually, is I had a experience as me and a black colleague at work. Our manager is a white woman, and she was lying about something. So I said she was lying. She did not lie this at all. I didn't shout it. I just said, "Look, you lied." Like, you know, I was quite calm and reasonable. I thought. Anyway, she called me aggressive. I was like, oh, hold on. So I just intervened and said, "Come on, that's racialized language. I'm not taking that." Her response basically was to jump out of she ran out of the room crying. There's no way to attack her. Honestly. And me and my colleague sitting there like, what just happened? Honestly, what happened? So I assumed that because I had a witness, I'll be fine, right? We complained. No, the white tears trump everything, believe me. Geez. So they pursued me for like a year and a half about it. I had to go to the media about it. It was ridiculous, right? And then I'm getting quite upset about this. I had counselling. It was a stressful time. And I went to my mum, and she looked at me and she said, "That's what being black is." I just walked up. I was like, "Okay, thanks, Mum." That wasn't what I expected at all. But it was it was what I needed though. It's what I need, honestly, because I got carried away in thinking that as professor, I'm going to get treated better. They're going to listen to me. Come on, that's not how these things work. No, this is. I should have anticipated that this was what it's going to be, but instead I'm fighting. Getting myself. Okay, I don't want to say I'm getting myself. I mean, I was legitimately upset, but the way that I responded to it made it worse because I expected something that I was not going to get, and that's what Mum was trying to tell me. Just don't. And this is kind of what this book is about. Say, look, it's not fair, it's not right, but that's the stuff you got to go through, and you have to find your. I don't find my. This is why I don't really use professor too much. And I don't have my well-being and my sense of self is not derived from my employer. It is 100% derived from places like this, outside, etc., and that's what keeps me going. And I think that's what we have to all understand. You try and look for this, look for recognition in these white spaces, and that's the end of you, honestly. So yeah.
I think you probably would hear, if you were to tell this story again elsewhere, I'm sure some of the feedback might be end up being something along the lines, and I think this may be true possibly of all of you, that, oh, you know, these are isolated experiences, you know, it happens, you know, get over it, and so on and so forth. And so I think when we're thinking about the structures, certainly for me, it struck me, especially in the editorial work that I've done, where I've edited for people writing about childbirth, you know, right the way through the spectrum, education, and all sorts of different topics and subjects. And one of the things that strikes me every single time I edit some work or indeed read some of these works is the various statistics. And the statistics, you know, we will say, well, maybe a person is, you know, exaggerating or whatever it is in terms of the story that they're telling, but the statistics don't lie, right? And so I wondered if each of you, maybe we could start with you, Kehinde, and then just come around in terms of the different statistics that have come across your, across your plate as you've kind of researched for your books. And this is really not to kind of be salacious in any way or to kind of, because they are upsetting when you think about them, when you read them. I know every time